The rain poured down hard that Monday morning, pelting against the tall glass windows of Winston Enterprises. Inside, the mood was no brighter. Employees moved with the usual robotic rhythm, typing, answering phones, filing papers, but beneath it all, there was an undercurrent of exhaustion and quiet resentment. They worked for one of the most powerful corporations in the country, yet few felt truly seen. At the very top of it all sat Victoria Winston, the company's young, sharp-minded CEO. To the world, she was the iron-willed heiress of a billion-dollar empire, a woman who had inherited her late father's corporation and turned it into something even bigger. To her staff, she was a mystery. Always distant, always unreachable, her name carried more weight than her presence. But Victoria had grown restless. The company had ballooned so quickly that she often wondered if she even knew the people keeping it alive. Were they loyal to her? Or just her money? She wanted to know the truth. So she devised a plan. For the first time in her life, Victoria shed her power suits, her designer heels, and the signature pearl necklace she never left home without. Instead, she dressed in an oversized gray sweater, faded jeans, and scuffed sneakers. She tucked her hair into a plain ponytail, added a second-hand backpack, and slipped into her own company through the side entrance. This time, not as the CEO, but as Veronica, a new temp hire in the custodial team. It was the ultimate test. How would her staff treat someone they thought had no money, no status, no power? The first week was brutal. She felt invisible. People brushed past her in hallways without a glance. Some whispered when she passed, mocking her baggy clothes or the way she pushed a mop bucket that squeaked with every roll. In the staff cafeteria, she often sat alone at the corner table, picking at her meal while conversations buzzed all around her. But amid the sea of indifference, one person stood out. His name was Daniel. Daniel was a single father in his mid-30s, working nights as a janitor while raising his little girl, Lily. His uniform was always a little too big, his shoes worn thin, but he carried himself with a quiet dignity that was impossible to ignore. While others avoided Veronica, Daniel always greeted her with a smile. He showed her where the supplies were, taught her shortcuts for cleaning stubborn stains, and cracked little jokes to lighten the endless shifts. One evening, when the building was nearly empty, Victoria watched Daniel scrub the marble floors of the lobby. His hands were red from the chemicals, and his shoulders slumped with fatigue. Yet when his phone buzzed, his whole face lit up. "Hi, Princess," he whispered, stepping aside to take the call. "Daddy's just finishing up, but I'll be home soon. Did you do your homework? That's my girl. I love you to the moon and back." Victoria's heart twisted. She'd grown up in wealth and privilege, never knowing the meaning of sacrifice. Watching Daniel, so devoted, so gentle despite his exhaustion, sparked something in her she couldn't name. Over the following weeks, she found herself drawn to him. They shared late-night conversations in break rooms, sipping bad coffee from paper cups. She learned about his struggles, how his wife had left years ago, how he juggled bills while making sure Lily never felt the weight of his hardship. Sometimes, Daniel admitted one night, "I feel like the world only sees what I can't give. They don't see how hard I try, but for Lily, I'll keep pushing. Always." Victoria had to excuse herself to the restroom after that, splashing cold water on her face to mask the tears welling up. It wasn't just kindness Daniel offered, it was hope, carved from the rough edges of hardship. But not everyone was kind. One morning, Victoria was mopping the executive hallway when she overheard a group of managers joking about her. "She looks like she crawled out of a thrift store dumpster," one sneered. "Probably doesn't even have a high school diploma," another laughed. "She should be grateful we even let people like her in here." Victoria clenched the mop handle, her jaw tight. Before she could respond, Daniel appeared. He walked right up to the group and said firmly, "You know, respect doesn't cost a dime. You should try it sometime." The men scoffed but left, muttering under their breath. Daniel turned to her with an apologetic smile. "Don't let them get to you. People who kick others down are usually standing on shaky ground themselves." For the first time in years, Victoria felt truly seen, not as a CEO, not as an heiress, but as a person. And that terrified her. Because every day she spent as Veronica, she grew more entangled in Daniel's quiet world. And every day she avoided the looming truth, that she wasn't who he thought she was. The breaking point came during the company's annual gala. Victoria had planned to attend in her usual CEO role,
but something inside her hesitated. Instead, she came as Veronica, slipping into the event unnoticed, wearing a simple dress instead of couture. From the corner of the ballroom, she watched her executives laugh, drink, and network. She saw their masks. The charm reserved for those with power, the indifference toward everyone else. She wondered how many of them would still smile if they knew she was nothing more than the janitor tonight. Then, across the room, she spotted Daniel. He wasn't a guest, he was working. Dressed in his janitor's uniform, he quietly cleared empty glasses from tables, wiping down counters while people brushed past him without so much as a glance. Victoria's chest tightened. She crossed the room, ignoring the stares of her staff as she joined him near the service table. "You shouldn't be here," Daniel whispered, startled to see her in a dress. "Neither should you," she replied softly. They shared a laugh, quiet and fleeting, but in that moment, surrounded by glittering gowns and tuxedos, Victoria realized something undeniable. She didn't care about the power games, the money, the endless climb to the top. She cared about him, but fate wasn't done with her yet.
The next morning, disaster struck. The board of directors announced sudden budget cuts, slashing jobs in the custodial department. Daniel was among those on the chopping block.
When Victoria heard the news, she froze. The plan had gone too far. She couldn't stand by and watch the man who had unknowingly reminded her what humanity looked like lose everything. That afternoon, the staff gathered in the lobby for the announcement. Executives in crisp suits stood at the podium, reading names off a list. The tension was suffocating. And then, something inside Victoria snapped. Before Daniel's name could be called, she stepped forward. But this time, she wasn't Veronica. She stood tall, pulling off the plain sweater to reveal the elegant silk blouse beneath. Her hair, once tied back, now framed her face in waves. And when she spoke, her voice carried the weight of truth. "Stop." The room fell silent. Every pair of eyes turned toward her, some in confusion, others in shock. "I won't let this continue," she said firmly, "because I'm not Veronica. My name is Victoria Winston. And I am your CEO." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some employees exchanged wide-eyed looks. Others covered their mouths. Daniel stood frozen, the mop still in his hand, staring at her as if she'd just spoken another language. Victoria took a deep breath, her gaze sweeping across the room. "I disguised myself these past weeks because I needed to know the truth, how this company treats the people who keep it alive. And I learned more than I could have ever imagined." She paused, her eyes finding Daniel's. "I learned what real dignity looks like. What real kindness feels like. And it came not from those with titles, but from those who give, even when they have nothing left." The silence was deafening. Then she turned back to the executives. "The budget cuts are cancelled, effective immediately. And let me be clear. This company will no longer measure its people by the weight of their wallets, but by the weight of their character." The lobby erupted in murmurs, disbelief, and relief. But Daniel still hadn't moved. His face was unreadable, his eyes locked on hers with a storm of emotions swirling behind them. Later that evening, when the building was empty, he finally found her standing in her office, gazing out at the city skyline. "So," he said slowly, "you're the boss." Victoria turned, guilt flickering across her face. "I never meant to deceive you. I had to know the truth." Daniel studied her quietly. "And what truth did you find?" Her voice trembled, but she didn't look away. "That you're the most extraordinary person I've ever met." For a long moment, silence hung between them. Then, slowly, Daniel set the mop aside and stepped closer. "You had every reason to look down on me, but you didn't, and maybe that says something too." Their eyes met, and for the first time, Victoria felt the weight of her father's empire lift from her shoulders. Because here, in this quiet moment, she wasn't a CEO or an heiress. She was just a woman who had finally found where she truly belonged. And in Daniel's steady gaze, she saw it clearly. She had mopped straight into his heart, just as he had into hers.